Today's guest is someone who's starting, developing, and continuing the conversation about how we think about art collecting, accessibility, and strategy. So welcome back, guys. I'm Moriah, Alise. This is Dear Glory, where we break down the nuances of the art world from insights, strategy, and discovery. I first connected with today's guest on Instagram, but one of you guys, Dear Glory viewers, insisted that I had to be talking to him, and they were absolutely right. His insights and his approach to art advising align so much with the work we're doing here, demystifying the art world, making it accessible to more people, and helping collectors build meaningful, strategic collections. I'm talking about none other than Rob Fields, an art advisor whose career path is anything but traditional. Rob didn't come up through the typical gallery or auction house system. Instead, his background in marketing, in PR, and cultural institutions has given him a unique perspective on how collectors can build collections with intention, strategy, and a strong personal narrative. He's worked with collectors at many different levels, from those just starting out to more seasoned collectors looking to refine their collections. And in a world where the art market often feels intimidating or reserved for the ultra wealthy, Rob is proving that collecting is for everyone, regardless of budget or background. Today, we're going to get into the real role of an art advisor beyond just finding works for clients. We'll talk about the biggest misconceptions people have about art advisors, how social media and technology are forcing the art world to become more transparent, the balance between emotional connections versus investment strategy. So, look, you know me. I don't care if you're a new collector trying to navigate your first acquisition, or if you're seasoned. This conversation is going to be packed with insights I don't want you to miss. So, Rob, welcome to the show. So, welcome back to Dear Glory, everyone. Where here we just don't observe the art world. We question it, we challenge it, and we build new ways. Well, we hope to build new ways of actually moving through it. Today, I'm sitting with someone who doesn't just talk the talk. He's doing what it takes. He's talking about culture. He's talking about the art world, and he's helping in his own right shape how we see the art world. He's helping support it. He's helping sustain it. And we're talking about Rob Fields, and he's a cultural strategist and an art advisor. And he's the force behind aesthetic slash index. Do you say it like that, Rob?
I just call it aesthetic index.
Okay, aesthetic index, where he breaks down the systems behind art and culture with the level of honesty and clarity that I know we're all looking for, and transparency that we need, and in a way that some people are afraid to touch in a critical way. So, Rob, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy Monday or happy good afternoon to everyone, so it's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah. So, how was your weekend? Did you have a good weekend?
I did. I'm unfortunately in that, sort of come to Jesus moment of having to get ready to see my accountant. So I'm dealing with all
Oh
of that stuff.
man.
But other than that, life is good. Life is real
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a good weekend too. We talked about the Untitled VIP weekend. And so that was
Right.
that was this weekend. So
Hmm.
had a really good opportunity to meet the director of Untitled, talk to some people involved with Untitled, and come up with some plans. So,
Good.
it was it was a great weekend. But today we're talking about what it really means to collect with intention,
Hmm.
advise with integrity, and move through this space, move through the art world without losing your center. So we're going deep into perception, into marketing, and the truth behind the scenes. Is
Right.
there anything that I missed about you that you want to add? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I will just say that I'm someone who I think is a great example of getting in where you fit in.
Mm.
I did not come up through the gallery system into my role as an art advisor. I was on the institutional side. I led two New York City cultural institutions, but I'm someone who's always loved culture and specifically Black culture and progressive Black culture. Back to the early aughts when I started an online magazine focused on what y'all now call Afro punk. We were calling it Black rock back then. But really looking at um, and trying to champion folks who were moving Black culture forward and who were coloring outside the lines and trying to expand notions of what it meant to be Black in America at that point and into the future. And so cultural advocacy has been something that has been long been part of who I am. And I think of myself as just this big cheerleader for, oh my God, have you not seen these great artists, be they music or visual art? And it's just like, I just want to bring more people into contact with all these great artists that you and I are both aware of in the
Yeah.
visual art space.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, even someone mentioned an artist to me yesterday and they were like, "What do you think about this artist?" And I had to take a second. I was like, "I don't know this artist."
There are
It's
so many,
it's so many, and I feel like because we do what we do, people think we might know all the artists, and I'm like, there's absolutely no way. So let me take a beat, take a second, and go look at this artist, figure it out.
right?
Gain an opinion really quickly and actually be
Hmm.
honest and say, hey, I don't even know who this artist is. Can you share more?
Right, right. You can't be afraid to say, I don't know is not a bad thing.
No, it's a perfect thing, right? Like that's how we continue to
Exactly.
learn.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I want to start with the fact that I know a lot of people don't even really know what art advising is. Like
Right.
it's such people don't know what it is. And
They don't
so,
know.
especially outside of the top tier like blue chip art world. So, for you, Rob, what does being an art advisor actually mean? And how has that definition evolved as both collectors and the market have kind of shifted?
For me, and the definition I use to explain art advising is that an art advisor is someone who helps people build private collections, primarily. An art advisor can also be someone that works with galleries to help the gallery get works by their artists placed into museum or other private collections, other kind of major collections. But by and large, that's the role of an art advisor to be a liaison and to bring their network of galleries and artists to bear to help individuals navigate this, wild and wacky art world and to build a collection that they can be proud of that reflects their taste and interests. An art advisor works for the collector. So it's like the same way as you would hire a lawyer or an accountant. We are a service provider, and our area of service is helping you navigate the art world. And we do that based on our relationships and the integrity that we have attached to our names. And it's really, that's it.
Yeah, I like that you said that the art advisor works for the collector. And I think that was so important for you to say because our own taste, we all have our own individual taste and our own individual likings,
Hmm.
but our own taste can't come in the way of what the collector is interested in. So I think that was really important. Sometimes I hear of, advisors kind of just throwing, I like this or I like that. It's a position where you actually have to take all of your thoughts and your opinions about what you like aesthetically away, put them in a corner and let them belong to you
Right, right,
and
right.
let the collectors their vision, their taste and their purpose shine through. How do
Yeah,
you
and where you can sort of have influence, I believe, is by helping to educate collectors. I mean, I do a lot of that, particularly because there are a lot of collectors that I work with that are new to this whole thing. So they're like, okay, big art world, New York City, biggest art market on the planet, literally 1,400 galleries. Where do we start? They want to learn and they want to get started, but they're just like, where do I start? How does this work? It's not clear. And
Yeah.
so a lot of what I know we both do is educating people about what it means to be a patron, a collector, to engage in this art world. And I find that, particularly in our community, that once you break it down to people, people are like, oh, So this is doable. I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this is the big takeaway. It's just like, it ain't that deep. I always love to tell people, rocket science and brain surgery. Well, this ain't that. So
Right.
you can do this. Um, and because I do want to, we are so aligned, you and I, because we're both about demystifying this. Because once you demystify it, you can bring more people into it, and they can really begin to experience it in a really full and exciting way. Once you take away all the, oh, $40 million for a painting. I don't have that. And it's just like that. Don't worry about that. That's not you. You are starting out, and maybe you only have 20,000 to spend for the year, but we're going to find you work. And there's work out there that is no less valuable, no yet less powerful, no less evocative, that speaks to you. And that's the thing we got to clear away from people. And they're like, oh, I can actually do this. Me, the person who works in pharma can like actually start collecting. It's that's the work that we need to do.
Yeah, and you said the word clear quite a few times. And so I have a question about how do you help a collector get clear on why they're collecting before you even talk about what they're collecting?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I spend time doing is, in those initial conversations are really about trying to get people to hone in on their likes and dislikes first.
Mhm.
We have, in many cases, uh, not been not given ourselves permission to like say explicitly, this is what I like, and we're looking to, well, I like this because I see a couple other people I know buying this and whatnot. And it's just like, you have to live with the art. And so part of it is giving people permission to be very clear about, I like this. I like figurative with textile elements. That's what I want to focus on. Meanwhile, the abstraction stuff is great, but I'm focusing right here. Or I like photography. I like black and white photography. I like photography. I want to support, and a lot of times people come to it with the notion that they want to support certain types of artists. They want to support women artists or LGBTQ artists or LGBTQ painters or whatever. And so at least people are beginning to, there's a growing awareness that you can kind of focus in some areas that relate to, where you have affinity.
Mhm.
And once you start people there, then it's like, okay, so within that world, what is it you're liking? And what
Right.
is it you don't like? And telling people that it's important to own the things you don't like, right?
Mhm.
Because this is about shaping a collection that reflects you and what your tastes are. And once you get people over that hump, then you give them a way to enter in a focused way. And from there, of course, those tastes evolve, and then they can say, well, I know we started here, but I've acquired a few pieces that are figurative with textile elements, but now I want to look at some abstraction. Cool. You know, People get situated, they get oriented, and they get more comfortable in the art world. And then they're like, oh, but I am seeing something I'm liking over there. Because as your eyes evolve, and this is the other thing to get people over, is this resistance to spending the time really just going to see art. Because that is also how you get to part A, which is what do you really like? You may know a few big names, but if you don't go out regularly to see art, you're not developing a personal sense of, oh, what I tend to be attracted to are these types of works. And the more clarity that a collector has about that, the more effective they can be in making decisions about where to allocate their resources. And ultimately, the thing that I want to do is I want to build smart collectors,
Mhm. Hmm.
because then we're having a real serious conversation, and it's not just, well, what do you think? It's just like, well, here's what I think, and you think this, and let me give you some perspective. Ultimately, it's going to be on you, but we're really having a dialogue then. And I want to create a cadre of just like smart people who are
Yeah.
out there. I'm not trying to hoard the knowledge or, keep you stupid so you can only like deal with art through me. And it's just like, it's not that deep. It's just like, I want you to be smart because if you're smart going out there, guess what? That's going to inspire other people. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you collected. And how did you do this? And oh, you can do this. And, the thing we know is that once you begin to, if people can see it, they can be it. And so
Yeah.
the more of us out there who are collecting,
Mm,
the more people are like, oh, collecting is just this normal thing,
mm.
right?
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think that creates this healthy relationship between
Mm-hmm.
advisor and collector of not, like you said, hoarding knowledge. Like there's no reason to do that. We're all going to
Right.
have our own perspectives anyway. And I love when we're talking to folks that are acquiring work or to collectors that we are in conversation with. I love when they have a different perspective than I do. And I love that we can go back and forth and share, and they can ask intriguing questions because that's one of the most
Right.
important thing, right? Like if you are working with a collector, you want them to have enough knowledge after working with you for so long or doing their own research or just being kind of embedded in this world to have intriguing questions and to have
Right.
thoughtful questions. So I totally agree with you. So what do you think, going even a little bit further, what do you think creates a healthy dynamic or a healthy relationship between advisor and collector?
I think a couple things. One is, again, I am a guide. And at some point, when you were little and your mom or your dad had the training wheels on the bike and you were like going down on your little banana seat and everything, and you had your training wheels, and at some point they had to help you get off the training wheels. And knowing that the relationship between me and my clients is going to evolve, one sets me up for success. It also sets them up for success. So it's not like um, the hoarding of knowledge also means that like some advisors I know of act in such a way as that like, well, you can only talk to the gallery through me because that's my relationship and I keep the two sides apart. I don't believe in like expending that much energy to like keep you from having a relationship with a gallery. Because at the end of the day, everybody remembers who brought you to that gallery. The gallerist does, the collector should, and it's all good. Again, this is part of building smart collectors and confident collectors where they know that they can now walk into a gallery. They have been given a great introduction by an advisor they trust, an advisor who still maintains a great relationship with the gallery. So when the gallerist sees the client coming in,
Mm,
and maybe this client is coming in on their own, it's this feeling of like, oh, this was Rob's client who brought them here. Even if they're not doing business with me in the mix, it goes to reputation, it goes to being able to get other referral business because this is a business of relationships. So if I walk in a room and there's like three or four people that I have like set up for success, that's a room full of love right there.
hmm.
And there's 330 million people in this country. So if these four people have evolved to the point where they're like, oh, I feel like I could do this on my own. That's great. So I have two choices. One, I could, you know, feel like, oh, but aren't you going to work with me some more? Or I could evolve my service offering.
Mm,
So initially for a client, it was about, let me help you find pieces. Now we are talking about you bought 8 pieces last year, 7 of which I helped you acquire.
mm,
Let's start thinking about your collection strategy going forward. Let's think about, hey, do you have insurance? Oh, wow, I really don't. So I'm helping her vet some insurance options because we don't need that leaky skylight to like ruin some work, right?
right.
So it's like thinking about how you continue to provide value so that people don't feel like they have outgrown you or that you are not useful or a valuable resource to them. It's not always going to be like, "Ooh, let me show you this art." It's just going to be like, maybe help you manage your collection because now this collector wants to start getting their work out to be loaned to museums. So now I'm helping her think about that piece of that phase
Right.
because she doesn't need me to help her necessarily find stuff, but we still hang out, we still go to stuff, and she's still like, "Hey, are you going to this?" And I'm like, so let the relationship develop,
Mm.
and realize that as a service provider, I think I'm always thinking about how do I up my game in
Mm.
terms of, access to resources, to artists, to like an increasing gallery network, to knowledge that I can share with clients, things like that, so that, when she is like, you know what, I don't have time, but I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. Do you any ideas? Oh, I got a couple of ideas for you. Let me get back to you in a day or so. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom.
I like
So
that. It's a
play
slow
the
burn.
you and you play the long game with all this
Right.
because art collecting is a long term process. Great collections are built over years and decades, not weeks and months. So those relationships should go equally as far. And
Right.
again, all we really have out here is our reputation
Mm.
of handling business above board, being people with integrity, and I think the rest of it will sort of carry. You want to
Mm.
walk into a room and have people be like, "Yeah, there she is. There's Moriah. Yeah." Or and you don't want them to be like, "Yeah, there's that MF Rob. Ugh, Rob's here." You don't want that. You just don't
No.
want that. You want people to be like, "Hey, I'm excited to see you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for bringing your client. Thanks for referring that business to me. Thanks for like helping me think about that such and such a thing. I didn't do it, but I did this." And you know, we're all in a community together,
Mm.
and that's got to be the vibe.
Right. Right, allowing it to be that slow burn. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a lesson I continue to learn. And
Right.
and I hope that I'll continue to learn it, that just, hey, slow down just a little bit. Always slow down just a little bit and allow relationships to flourish continuously, right? Because that's what they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do over time. Sometimes you don't work with someone for 3 years, 4 years, but on that fourth year is the perfect time to
Right.
work with them. And if
Right.
you would have rushed it, you might have ruined the relationship, or you might have just missed out on an opportunity that was going to come later down the line. That kind of leads me to a question of responsibility. And
Mm-hmm.
that's responsibility on multiple levels. Like, what is the responsibility? We've kind of just touched on the responsibility that the advisor has to the collector. Now, at some point, what is the responsibility that the collector could have towards the advisor?
I think that it's best summed up in that old phrase, remember to dance with who brung you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you are getting ready to do business with a gallery or an artist that your advisor brought you to, then maybe let them know. Maybe let them know.
Yeah.
And also look, if this is someone who if this is an artist or a gallery or you discovered an artist through a specific gallery that your advisor brought, you should have a conversation who's like, yo, do I need to cut this my advisor in on that commission for this? Because even if that sale like took 6 months for you to decide, and but your advisor took you back to the gallery a couple times, told you to come see this next show,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, with this artist. And so it's like it should be pretty clear that you're in that circle of potential buyers for that work at that gallery because somebody brought you to them. And so always just be respectful of that, the responsibility. Now, if that is, and I feel like that's something that you should just do. If an advisor has brought you to a gallery, introduced you to an artist, and you buy some work, then pay that commission because this was
Yeah.
not, none of this was charity. None of this was charity.
Yeah. I
You
think
would
that's
not stiff your
interesting.
lawyer. You would not
Yeah.
stiff your lawyer.
Yeah.
Now it's a whole different situation if if the situation is different in that this is an artist that you discovered on your own as a collector, you went to the did the studio visit, blah blah blah, or separately from your advisor, you at different times showed up at a gallery, you decided to buy something, and you had not engaged your advisor to help you find that type of work.
Mhm.
That's a clear cut situation where it's like, I don't think I, as an advisor, am entitled to such and such.
Right.
I have a great experience that, like, one of my clients went to see this one artist. She went to the show about an hour before I got there, you know,
Mhm.
and then I didn't, and then, she eventually bought something, which I wasn't thinking she was really looking at something like that, but I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's your thing. You did your thing.
Yeah.
I can't come back to her and be like, well, you should pay me because we were both happened to be going to that show that night. That's not ethical.
Yeah.
And also, she didn't tell me that she was looking for anything. So I feel no way like she owes me anything
Right.
for that. So that's in my mind a pretty clear cut situation,
Right.
where it's like you're doing your thing, and as a collector, you should. And in that situation, I'm also under that client and I are under no retainer kind of thing. We just, that's not how we worked. So, I think that's all good, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just explores like ethics, right? I mean,
You're right.
it's a business of ethics. We all have to have ethics, and there's no regulation here.
Right.
So we have to come into this space with that. Um,
Exactly.
and we have to come into this space understanding relational dynamics. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So there was a responsibility there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
advisor to collector, collector to advisor. But then there's also this relationship and this responsibility that collectors have to artists. But
Right.
I think we know about that one, right? I mean, I want to touch on it a little bit, but what I really want to dive into is what responsibility do artists have to collectors, if any?
The responsibility of artists to collectors is, I mean, I think you really get into it when you're thinking about commissions and commission work and whatnot. I think that, and certainly the basic responsibility of being able to represent that, yes, I, artist X, made these paintings of which you are now buying. And, I think that the artist certainly should be, one would hope that they are respectful of anyone who's put down hard-earned money for their work. Um, they are not obligated to be the collector's best friend. I mean, again, it's all a business of
Yeah.
relationships, I should say. And so I do think that just being honest about what work is available, that you made the work, that this is work that you as the artist believe in, and not just some like, oh, I was going to throw this away anyway, but if you want it, I'll sell
Mm,
it to you, that kind of thing.
mm,
Um, and I think the artist has the responsibility just along those same lines, just to put their best work forward. When they're ready to put work up for sale, then it should be the best work that you're doing, at that point in time. And beyond that, I mean, I hesitate to say more because I do think that none of this business works if we don't have artists. And so I think the larger responsibility is on the part of collectors, advisors, and curators and gallerists and other institutions towards artists to make sure that they're treated fairly, to make sure that, they're not uh, buying work just to flip,
mm,
and
mhm.
artificially inflate prices, because that does have an adverse effect on, or can have an adverse effect on, an artist's
Artists.
career, as we saw recently with some artists. And where there's money, there's always going to be speculators. But I think that, really that's the role of other collectors, conscientious gallerists, and advisors to make sure that the information ecosystem is clear about who all these people are that are swirling around
Yeah.
the artist. And if you have a relationship with an artist, you could be like, yo, you might not want to sell work to that person because they just flipped like so and so's work. And, you know, that's not talking about anybody. It's just like this is knowledge. This is, you want to protect art, particularly like, artists, from our communities who routinely get taken advantage of. So I think that in terms of the responsibility of artists to collectors, it's as I laid out, just to do great or do your best work and not be like, I'm gonna sell you this, but then be secretly getting ready to sell somebody the same work. It's not a producer situation. I'll sell this piece to you. Meanwhile, you sold it twice over here. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Obvious.
Oh
But I
yeah. I
really
mean,
do. I do think the bigger responsibility is how the other parts of the ecosystem tend to work towards the artist.
yeah.
Because that's where advantage gets taken.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that artists tend to focus only on their art, while this other part of this ecosystem focuses so heavily of building the ecosystem or taking
Hmm.
advantage of the ecosystem or doing the right thing. It's either one of the other. I would say, sustainability for the artist, making sure that they're creating sustainable work.
Right.
Making sure that if you're working with an artist that lives across the world and you're here and or wherever you are, that when you get the work is as you've seen it. And they spoke about all the things that could be the condition of the work. I think that it's twofold, right? Like there is a responsibility that the artist holds to the collector, but we all have to be responsible towards one another. So if you could teach a masterclass on how to move with integrity in the art world, and I ask so many questions about this because I find so many folks and so many artists having questions about how to move. And I think they're scared to make specific moves and do specific things and, you know, get a bit insecure about the things that they've done, maybe said, or how they showed up somewhere, right? I mean, I think we all have that.
Hmm.
But if you could teach a class on how to move with integrity in the art world, what would be your first lesson?
First lesson is be part of an artistic community, you know, because that helps ground you. Like in a city like New York, which is a big, big, fast moving city, um, it can get lonely. And if you're out here by yourself, it can just be deadly in a lot of ways, just spiritually, emotionally, um, and it can just be lonely,
Mm.
in that way. And so, one, we need community, and what community gives you are people who have entered the marketplace relatively around at the same point you have, and can be like, hey, I just dealt with this gallerist over here. They're trash. Stay away from them. Just getting and being able to get intel like that, because the fact is artists talk to each other. So if you are as a collector or an advisor or an exhibition venue, if you do one artist dirty, best believe that 10 of their friends now know about it and are going to be like, we're not doing shows there. Artists talk. I've been around artists when they're like, do not do shows with this gallery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. From a and so one is find a crew of people who are not like necessarily not they don't necessarily need to be the fastest rising stars, but they just need to be people you vibe with and who are on the same wavelength around issues of integrity and ethics. There's a way to do things, there's a way not to do things. You want to find, just like you would with your best friends outside of the art world, you want people who are going to say your name in a room when you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Moriah's good people. Oh, you're going to Houston. You need to talk to Moriah
Mm-hmm.
Alise. You
Changes
know,
everything.
it does change everything, and it also tells the other person that, oh, this person knows this person knows the person I'm talking to as well. And
Mhm.
so it creates another sense level of accountability, because it's like, oh, this person not Mariah's not out here by herself because she knows the person I'm sitting here talking to.
Right.
I think that, you know, just finding ways to access informal networks of information and
Mm,
then modeling careers and behaviors on people that you respect
mm,
is absolutely important. It's like, you know, the artist Derek Adams, who's teaches art at Brooklyn College. He's like, okay, tell me what kind of career you want, and I'll give you some people to model.
love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because a different kind of career requires that you be in different kind of spaces and do different kind of things. And
Hmm.
now, knowing that, you still have to figure out how to operate with integrity. It's like it's not, and moving ethically and with integrity does not mean that you stay away from self-promotion.
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh
And
no.
that is what people feel like, oh, I don't really want to promote because it's so unseemly. It's like, no, it's like you got to beat your own drum.
Mm-hmm.
The old Kanye was like, doing the whole Muhammad Ali thing, right?
Old Kanye
You
is
know,
funny.
but yeah, I don't know what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
But it's just like, but those were self-affirmations that he and Muhammad Ali were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And people found that boastful, but they could back it up. At one
Mm-hmm.
point, Kanye could back it up,
Mm-hmm.
with his production and all that stuff. And so if your work matches your talk, or your talk can match your work, then you're not really boasting. You're just stating facts. How other people perceive it is that's on them. But I think one of the ways people hide behind this notion of, oh, I want to move with integrity, that's another way of them saying they may not feel comfortable owning their own shit in a
Mm-hmm.
good way. And
Mm-hmm.
just owning the fact that, like, no, I am good at this. I am committed to this. I do
Mm-hmm.
want to be successful at this. And
Yeah. That's really
that's
sparking something for me. I mean,
okay.
like, yeah, it is because um I think in this space you almost say like I've even said a few times I don't want to I don't want the work to lose its integrity,
Hmm.
or I don't want the space to lose its integrity, like for instance if we're doing a show somewhere. And I think those are important things to keep front of mind. But I think a lot of people and a lot of artists in this space, we're going a different way, I believe now, but in this space feel quiet keeps integrity, and quiet is keeping you. It's a quiet. I know there's a way to market here, and it's a quiet market, and it's a quiet marketing tactic. But for artists that want to get their work out, no one's gonna know you if you don't tell them to.
Right. And I try and remind everyone, and this is not just for artists, it's for, advisors, it's for
Yeah.
people in whatever industry. We are living in an attention economy.
Yes.
The greatest, sort of asset you have is the ability to hold an audience's attention.
Yeah.
And you want to do it for the right reasons, but this is part of the game that we have to play now.
Mm,
You have to toot your horn. You have to let people know when you've got a show, and that what if the work is important to you, then you've got
mhm.
to find a way to share that story because it's going to resonate with someone.
Yeah.
But if you don't tell anyone, it's going to resonate with no one, right?
Mm, mm,
And now you could be lucky. You, as an artist, could be lucky, and somebody just comes up and is just like, "Oh my God, this is so amazing! I'm going to be that champion for you.
yeah.
I'm going to go and call people. I'm going to go beat the drum and post it on Instagram. That, like, look at this amazing work." And because they have connections, now you start getting shows and into museum collections, important collect. That can happen,
Yeah. But that's still
but
marketing. That's still
that's
marketing.
still that's still marketing,
Yeah.
and but you need to be able to own the fact that this work you believe in, you have to find a way to talk about it to
Hmm.
someone, and
Hmm.
not think that that's related to somehow having less integrity.
Mm,
And I just want to disabuse people of that notion because somehow that sort of humility is sort of Protestant work ethic, sort of like just work hard, people will notice you. I
mm,
can tell you as somebody who subscribed to that for a long time, people will like not notice you. They will not give you credit if you don't stand up and say, "Hey, I just did this
mm-hmm.
and I'm excited about it. I'm proud of it."
Mm-hmm.
And, you have to say my name in relation to X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just claiming space.
Hmm.
We've got plenty of examples of folks in our community who just claim some space.
Right.
And again, if it makes somebody else uncomfortable, that's a you problem, not a me problem, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I don't want to confuse this like, this is a more ethical road to take the silent sort of approach. It's like, yes, the work needs to, when you get the attention,
Mm.
the work still needs to be banging.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be on a
Yeah.
level, it
Yeah.
needs to be in conversation with where the bar is,
Yeah.
so that needs to be the given there,
Yeah.
that like, oh, well, now that I have your attention, when you see my work, you can't be like, oh, is this it?
And you can share
So
your work without being like, without having
yeah,
some type of gimmick. You can do that, right? Like you don't have to,
exactly.
it doesn't have to be gimmicky. In the art world, even though it is a quiet space and even though it is very niche, it still exists in this network of there's still media outlets. There's
Right,
still there's still writers that write about, there's still
right,
magazines. There's
right.
still this network of things around. And if you do not get your story out there and the journalists don't know you and they don't know what to write about, they will not write about you, then people will not read about you. And this is a reading heavy community. We read a lot.
Yes,
So
this is very
publications
true.
still matter.
Right, right. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What would you say has been a mindset shift for you in this space that has changed the way that you work? Like if the way that you came into this space, working in this space, from the moment that you started working until now, what has been a mindset shift that has changed everything for you?
I think the biggest thing was that I've had to really think about what I'm doing as a service, in which case I've had to uh, productize, I will say, some of the things that I offer, so that one, I can begin to predict revenue, because the one thing I learned was like, oh, the successful art advisors are not working just strictly on commission, unless you're working with like millionaires who are spending 6, 7 figures a year on art. And then it's like, oh, that 5% commission, that's cool, on every one of your pieces. That's great.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for those of us who are working with emerging new collectors, and sort of like collectors, sort of like that mid tier. I've there certainly had to think about like different sort of business models for this business so that it can be sustainable. And I haven't fully figured it out, although I have shifted to a more of a retainer type model, like, because my pitch is very simple. Give me 3 months and I will help you find the work you want. Even if you were like, I don't know anything about art today, 3 months from now, you're going to have some work, and we're going to have a strategy in place and all that stuff. So, I've just learned to turn what I do into a discrete, definable time, you know, time banded sort of process,
Mhm.
so that I can say I can take you from A to B to C, and at C you'll have this, and you're going to pay me for these things, because at the end of the day, got to eat, right?
Yeah.
Got to pay those bills.
Yeah.
That has been really important shift for me, because again, I'm a fan, so I just want to get in there and be like, come on, let's go see some art, let me help you
Yeah.
figure this out, blah blah blah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, Rob, slow down,
Yeah.
don't overwhelm people.
Yeah.
And also, you also just realizing that like the things that I have learned, in my going on 2 years in this portion of the business,
Mhm.
it's taken almost 2 years to
Hmm.
sort of learn all this stuff. And so if you do a quick brain dump on somebody, it's just like it could be overwhelming.
Right.
So you've got to, have the time. You've got to sort of like understand the psychology of spending discretionary money
Mm.
on something that people are just beginning to develop an understanding around. Like I've always said, people understand what it means if you say Birkin bag, if you say E-Class Mercedes, if you say Rolex or something like that, or a Patek, a wine collection, even. People are like, yeah, I love collecting wine. People get that.
Yeah.
But when you say that painting is $10,000 or $5,000, people are like, well, explain. I don't understand the valuation scale here. And
Yeah.
so understanding how and I'm still working on better and better ways to like help people move through their sort of understanding their, placing art collecting in the context of everything else they're doing, because this is a hobby, you
Hmm.
know, and we need to be 100% real about this. Nobody's living in their car with their paintings, right?
Hmm.
People, this is like something else that people do that gives them pleasure and joy, but they still, putting kids through college, they're still paying mortgages, they still paying down credit card bills, they still want to travel,
Yeah.
they still want to go home and see their mama for the Christmas holiday and all that stuff. And so, you know, they still have a 40, 50 hour week job that they got to deal with. So this is something that happens in the margins. And as important as it is to me, and as much joy as I get out, I have to understand
Hmm.
that people are like they're taking that massive block of attention and they're parceling like this much off of it to art because they got other things going on. And that's just the reality. And I
Yeah.
think the sooner I understood that, the easier it was for me to understand, like, oh, this person hasn't gotten back to me when they said they would, because life be life and sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's like, you just got to understand that. So
Yeah.
those are the big things that have really helped me. And then the third thing I think is just diversifying the from a business standpoint, diversifying the revenue for
Mm-hmm.
me, not only the business model, but like, a lot of my background, like yours, is in marketing. So I do marketing projects
Mm-hmm.
to help me to be able to afford to spend the time, develop the relationships and all that stuff in the art world. But at the same time, I could still go grocery shopping because I got this other marketing stuff happening. I could still
Right.
pay the mortgage, all that stuff. So it's just sort of balancing all of that sort of short, long-term needs that have been like, oh, okay, this is how I can do this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you there. I think one thing that's been difficult for me is people DMing me and asking me for advice because I really love to talk about art. I
right.
mean,
But you do that on your channel
yeah,
all the time. You've
all the
got your
time,
Patreon.
all the
You could
time.
be like, yeah, you got to get to the point where you're like, hey, here's my Patreon, here's my
Yeah.
YouTube channel,
There's
blah,
so
blah,
much
blah.
information.
So much.
Yeah, and
You have
I've gotten
given.
caught up. I've gotten caught up, Rob, so many
Yeah.
times in forming relationships with people via Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And where people ask me for advice and I'm just giving it to them.
No, but you know
Because
what?
in
Here's the thing that I would do if I were you. I'd be
yeah,
like, oh, you want to talk? You want to pick my brain about that? It's like, you know, $500, $250 for 30 minutes.
yeah.
Here's my Calendly.
Oh,
You
y'all
pick a
heard that? Y'all
time.
heard what Rob said I'm worth?
I mean, I'm just
$500.
making up a number here. You could charge more because you got Houston on lock and everything. So, but I would do that because that weeds out people that just want to like waste your time versus like, when people have to put up money, then they're serious about it. They come to it
Yeah,
prepared, and also it compensates you for your expertise. So you're not, you in the words of those great poets, nice and smooth, got to rock for a fee, not for free, right?
I like that. I don't know who that is, but I like
Oh, well, see, you too young. You don't remember.
it.
This is like 90s hip hop and everything. But yeah, so it is. it's really just about, it's a thing about not necessarily having to say no, but saying, so I'm happy to talk to you here. You can sign up for consulting for a 30-minute session. This is what it costs, and I'm happy to talk to you. Boom. And keep it rocking. Because when faced with that, most people be like, oh, I mean, I thought I could just ask you a quick question. It's like, no, no. All the answers that you want probably are somewhere on the Dear Glory YouTube channel or the Patreon. You just had that Calendly link with that, like, accept credit card thing ready anytime somebody DMs you. Be like,
Oh my
yeah, girl.
God, I know. It's honestly, I'm so bad about it. And like I was saying, I love to talk about art so much. Sometimes I just get caught up in the conversation of you know, I'm just gonna tell you what I think about it, and I really need to start. It's not like I don't have a clientele, and I do. It's that I could probably have a much larger clientele if I didn't give away
Right.
so much free advice, which, like you said, Rob, I'm already doing here.
Yeah, it's not like, people don't know where to, like, your YouTube stuff is free and it's in
Yeah,
depth.
yeah,
You're not doing like little 5, 10 minute videos. I mean, you are in conversations, you're
yeah.
going through here's the valuations on artists, here's how you think about this,
It's
that, and the
honestly
third.
way too much. It's
Yeah, and if and
it's
if you
too
want and if
much.
you want more, you should be like, I'm not shouldn't say should, but like pushing folks to your Patreon,
Yeah.
to where you go into even further depth. So, you know, yeah, and just getting over this whole thing of like, oh, it's unseemly to charge. No, if any of those folks went to call
Yeah.
their lawyer would be like, yep, we can talk. And they'd be like, yeah, let me send you a bill for them 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes. And
In
any
15 minutes, the last thing I'll say on this is I met a lawyer back when I was in the music industry. I knew a bunch of music lawyers. And one of them, a Black woman, said to me, so what my mentor told me was, you have a choice. You can make $500 this hour or you cannot. It's up to
hmm,
you.
because it's billable hours.
Yeah, so it's like you can choose to like bill that or not, but
Yeah.
that's what we see your time is worth here. And so she's like, that changed my thinking about a lot of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just choosing not to bill you for this like 20-minute little chat you wanted to come in and have.
Yeah.
But this is my rate and this is what it does. Because you don't just be calling up your lawyer to shoot shit, You
No,
got, oh, I just want to
well,
ask you
I
about blah blah
do,
blah.
but thankfully
Well,
my lawyer is also my best friend.
yeah, well,
Thankfully,
yeah.
my college roommate decided she wanted to be an attorney and in also in media and in
Oh, good,
entertainment.
good,
So
good.
I
Yeah.
do call my
The
lawyer to shoot the
exception,
shit.
the exception that proves the rule. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Funny thing is she definitely still sends me a bill. Sometimes I try to frame it as, "Hey girl, what are you doing?" But she's like,
Uh,
"No, that was 100% advice."
100% billable advice.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. So we
Yeah.
we kind of talked about how like us as advisors, how we can get in our own way, and that's really
Mhm.
through love and passion.
Right.
But how can both artists and collectors accidentally get in their own way?
I think with collectors, it's, not after the initial sort of like, oh, I'm like feeling good about buying and I love this. And it's kind of like this like new thing and feels good to go in and be able to be like, I want to buy that piece. And, a gallerist is giving you love and you're going to pick up your piece or whatever. And it feels good. It's endorphins rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think not being thoughtful because of the fact and not having some kind of a plan in place
Yeah.
really is going to get you caught up because there is, as you and I both know, there's a ton of amazing art out there. There's a ton of amazing emerging artists, mid-career artists, whatnot. There's a ton of amazing emerging and mid-career artists from the African diaspora in the global South. Like the next generation Wangechi Mutus and Sanford Biggers are here now and out here killing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you could be like, oh, I want to get that. Oh, wait, that's over there, and that's equally good. And wait a minute, I didn't even know about this artist coming in and doing this show, this artist based in Lagos who's doing this, or but I mean, it's just so much, and so you can come out of the gate, start spending without a spending plan in place, and then you're like, ooh, I spent that much on art this year.
Mm.
And really being able to have a plan sort of at least gives you some discipline and gives you something to think about. Having a partner and an art advisor for collectors is just somebody who will say, as I've said to a client, that number you told me, you're about to hit that number.
Yeah.
Are you good? And then it's up to the client to say, no, I'm good, which means okay, they've figured out where they can move money around and get access to some additional funds. But that needs to be a choice. That needs to be
Mm.
choiceful, going over that budget. It may happen, you may get a bonus in a year and be like, oh, this is gonna be more than I thought that I could spend on art this year. Great, that's a choice. But at least having a plan lets when you're deviating from a plan and what the implications that's going to have for your spending.
Yeah.
Um, and also just helping you narrow down your choices, like what you're focused on right now for your collection. Um, and so artists, I think, get themselves into trouble by not spending enough time trying to figure out how they uniquely can contribute to the dialogue within their discipline or in the field. The great Daoud Bey has a great book called photographing people and communities. And one of the quotes I always come back to is he's like, look, you got to know when and where you enter. And he didn't say this, I'm saying this, but basically his quote was like, there's a long table with whatever discipline you're in, painting, photography, sculpture, whatever. And there's been a conversation going on at that table for long before you got there.
Mm-hmm.
And so your job is to understand what that conversation and figure out what you uniquely can add to it.
Mm-hmm.
So to bring this down to more of a concrete level, I always say there's a lot of mugs out there who can paint. Technically, really, really good. Like, wow, representationally, figured, really, you can paint,
Right.
no question. But
Right.
the deeper question is, what are you trying to say? What questions are you grappling with? Um, what is your unique voice and approach to this medium? We have at least 70 years of abstraction since the end of World War II.
Yeah.
My math is off here, but we've got several hundred years of representational figurative painting, since the Italian Renaissance or whatever that is. um so what are you bringing this new to the table, beyond like, okay, you got to get out of your system painting like, black men and black women as kings and queens in Africa and all that. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what else do you have to say?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, and this is what comes from like not being part of a community and being in dialogue with peers who are trying to push themselves, and because steel, what do they say, steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron, that kind
Right.
of thing. And so you got to be around people as an artist who are trying to be about it,
Mm-hmm.
and not just like getting the shows but the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because oh, we all was hanging out at so and so studio, and I saw what they're doing. I was like, whoa. Or like a musician's like, oh, I went to see that show and they were killing it. That saxophone player was killing it. I need to
Yeah.
go home and practice. Like that needs to be the impetus beyond just like, oh, I made a great painting on a canvas. It's like, yeah, a lot of people can paint.
Yeah.
I always say a lot of motherfuckers can paint out
Yeah.
here. Okay.
I'm gonna have to bleep you
But
out,
all
Rob. You're gonna get my stuff not monetized.
demonetized, we don't want that.
Demonetized. There we go.
As I
So
said,
speak your truth.
there are a lot of mugs who from the Midwest. There are a lot of mugs who can paint.
Yeah.
But, the things that I am looking for, the things I try to encourage my clients to go for are people who are really honing, and artists who are really honing in on their unique perspective, not like unique, like, oh my God, this has never been done before, but where their voice is coming through. It's like when you read writers who are distinctive, you're like, wow,
Hmm.
yes, there are millions of books out there, but if you read, you know, uh, Toni Morrison, which is not a fair example because how many Morrisons are there? But even somebody like Victor Laval or somebody like that, that really distinctive voices out there in terms of storytelling.
Hmm.
Um, and you can and their work stands out because of that,
Hmm.
and the ways that they construct their sentences, even though they're constructing sentences just like everybody else. And so that is the thing that I think that artists, and I'm often encouraging Black artists to be like, okay, make sure you're pushing yourself. You got
Right.
the foundation is solid.
Right.
We just went to a MFA Open Studios at one of the schools here, and a lot of times I said to people, "This is really good. You have talent, but you got to keep pushing yourself because you can get to that place of like, oh, I can do this thing, and I don't have to think about it anymore. But then that could stop you in terms of your development as an artist,
Yeah.
and what gains value in the marketplace often are really unique voices or really defined voices
Hmm.
that are not copies of someone else, or, oh, I see that work, that reminds me of, like, Deborah Roberts, or that
Hmm.
collage work. Like, what is your unique way of coming at collage?
Hmm.
And clearly Deborah Roberts is, in the tradition of a Bearden, but she's doing something completely different, right?
Ooh, I like that you said
Distinctive.
that. That's really important to recognize because I mean it was something we already know. Like Deborah Roberts is in the tradition of Bearden. That
Hmm.
sentence alone, right? We're these artists are in conversation.
Of course.
And that's something that we cannot ignore. It's the fact of how can you take the conversation that you are a part of, that you are within, and make that have a different approach, but also a different aesthetic. And I think that's where
Yeah.
it gets hard because you can have your own context and you can have your own thoughts and your own ideas, but you might approach it aesthetically and technically in a very, very similar way. And I think the challenge for a lot of artists is getting away and finding their own aesthetic voice. I think they have their own contextual voice a lot of times, but having their own aesthetic voice, especially when they're inspired by particular artists, gets really difficult.
Right, right. Because it's
Yeah,
like, it's one thing to be inspired by, but then it's
yeah,
like you have to take that inspiration and
yeah,
then use that as fuel into what can you uniquely do that no one else here is doing.
yeah.
Miles Davis says it took me years to figure out how to sound like myself,
Mm.
right? And that's the work of being an artist.
Mhm. That is, and
And
that's the
and,
work.
and that's like, I can't do that for you. I can't do that. I can also, on the flip side of that is collectors. This is the value of collectors seeing a lot of work, spending time, you know, getting some frameworks for art history. Because as you walk into a studio or a show, you can be like, oh, well, based on what I've seen, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Based on what I've seen, or conversely, based on what I've seen, this is not that good
Mm.
because it reminds me too much of this other thing. And if
Yeah.
I want that, I'm going to go to that, see that artist.
That's so hard. It takes a lot of,
It
I've
it
even thought
does.
about this for myself, even though I'm not a practicing artist at all. I mean, I've thought about it because I'm like, okay, if this has to be difficult. Now, what in my own life would lend to my art if I were an artist? And so I think
Right.
about you got to go back, and like you have to go back into your family history and back into where you grew up. You have to dig into yours. You can't dig into nobody else but yourself when you're trying to
Right,
be yourself.
right. And it is hard because you often, my wife is a writer, and she's done two memoirs and two
Yeah.
novels, and she's like, the difference between you and me is you don't like to do that kind of like deep work
Mm,
that you because you have to often confront things in your history in yourself if you're going to be honest on the page,
it's exhausting.
which is why I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself. I know that about myself. But if you're telling me, oh, hey, I'm an artist, then I'm hoping that you have the ability to go and look at yourself in those dark places
Hmm.
to see where you failed, where you have been weak, and what you learned from that, and
Hmm.
how you embrace the complexity and uniqueness of you, because that's what I'm looking for on the canvas
Hmm.
or in the sculpture or in whatever medium you're doing. That's what I'm looking for. That's where I'm looking to be moved by so that we can connect through this medium to our shared humanity,
Right. And that's it right
right?
there. Because if you don't, if you're just so self and that you never reach anyone else and you never reach anyone else's, you don't have any type of what's the word I'm looking for? You're not connecting through with them through their own experiences, through your experiences to reach their
Mm-hmm.
experiences. It's not gonna go anywhere. And
Not
it's most definitely not gonna reach an international stage. And so
right.
yeah, like you have to think about these things as an artist. And this is why I think advisors that work with collectors, especially if you work with collectors that collect more on a higher level, you can work with emerging artists because
Mm-hmm.
you're learning you're on a constant journey of learning from these more established artists, and you are such a student because you're an advisor can give that information to a younger artist. I think that
Yeah.
dual work, which is why I do that, I think that dual work is important because a lot of more early emerging artists, they're still trying to figure out how do I be myself? And I don't think that's
Right.
something that I think I'm still trying to figure out how do I be myself?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
think
Right.
that's a journey that I think most of us are on that journey. It's just they're
Mm-hmm.
putting their journey on view for everyone.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, that is the value of MFA programs, right?
Right.
Because what my understanding of MFA programs is that one of the things they are good at is about helping artists find their voice, get to sort of some core things about themselves and their practice and whatnot. And that is something that takes time. And so in an MFA program, you've got 4 years in undergrad, you've got 2 years in an MFA program where you're like got a studio space, you can begin to work on some things.
Mhm.
And that's important time for you to hone in, you as an artist to hone in on, the things that are important, the things that make you unique, even when your studio mate is over here doing stuff and all these galleries and collectors are coming over to their studio and you're just like, damn, ain't nobody coming over here. You can't worry about that. It's like you got to do you and figure that out so that when you're ready to come out,
Mm. You
you're
ready?
saying something. You're
Yeah.
ready. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just no way around that. And this is the hard work of being an artist, which is separate from being a commercially successful artist, which,
Mm.
that's those are a couple different things, and also get into, you know, market forces and things like that. And sometimes it's just some freaking luck, you know.
I think a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's luck. And and also, I go back to, Derek Adams' thing about what kind of career do you want to have? I mean, if you're trying to be um a Jeff Koons or a Damien Hirst, that's a very different trajectory
Totally.
than if you're trying to be like, I want to do my art, but I'm gonna get this teaching job because there's nothing wrong with that. You get benefits and you get your summers off. Come on, that's academic life is good, right?
Mhm.
Um, or if you just want to, or if you want to be an artist, I just want to do my art all the time and be able to support myself. That's another career trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about, again, having, for artists, having these models, but it all, sort of starts with this clarity and distinctiveness, I think, so that nobody's going to be confused when they see a Moriah Alise painting and be like, oh, that's who that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you
Right.
see, I think of like an April Bay or a
Mm-hmm.
Nate Lewis or somebody like that, or Joanna Chumali. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
distinctive work,
Very
right? And it's
distinctive.
just like you not confused as to who this is, right?
At all.
At all. And
Yes.
so that's what you're going for. Um, and I think
Yeah.
that is, and it
Tough.
comes quicker. It's tough, but it also comes quicker for some people. And I love,
Yeah.
like Nate's story, for example, is he spent 8 years, 8, 9 years as an emergency medical tech. So that experience informs materials
Mm-hmm.
and his work, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just,
Mm-hmm.
and what he has now created out of having that as part of his experience
Right.
is some beautiful and just stunning work.
Mm.
His career is just, I think his show is still up at Ville in LA. Worth seeing if y'all been out there. I've only seen the previews and it's stunning because I haven't been out to LA and go out for freeze. But he couldn't do that if he wasn't clear and focused about, okay, I'm gonna make art based on my experiences and materials I'm familiar with and the things that are important to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
that's what you just said was important about allowing things in your life to inform your practice. That's
right,
it.
right, right,
That's
right.
it. Allowing
And if
things
you
in
don't
your
have
life.
people around you that like get what you're doing, because a lot of us, come from families where they are rightfully concerned about security for their children, right? And they're like, that paint is good, but doctor, lawyer, engineer, that kind
Yeah.
of thing you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
You got to like surround yourself with people who are like, I get what you're doing. Here's how you can do it, blah, blah, blah. You got to make sure you're surrounded because this is hard. This life is hard enough,
Yeah.
to do it. So you don't want people there who are detracting from what you're trying to do, and you also want to make sure that you've got people who know how to support you
Mm.
as an artist and what that means. And I think generationally, we are now starting to see enough of like there are enough artists and young artists out there that we're seeing a shift in that. When I was coming up back in the day, this is what my parents knew. They were like, you need a job so you can
Yeah.
like take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
I was not trying to be an artist. That's why I never majored in creative writing, because my parents were like, we're not paying for a degree in creative writing. You need a real degree,
Yeah.
you know. But I think we're seeing sort of like enough of a cultural shift where artists are, people understand that people make their living as artists, particularly folks in our community are like, oh, people make their living as artists, and that's not some far-fetched thing that, only a couple people are able to do.
Yeah.
So I think that the cultural space is opening up. I think that we have more examples of people doing that. And it's important for artists to make sure they are not only surrounding themselves with people who get what they're doing, but they're able to explain, here's my plan, mom,
Yeah.
or how I'm trying to make this work. You can't expect your parents to know stuff,
Yeah.
right? So you got to
Yeah.
be able to explain it to your mom and your grandma. Baby, what you doing out here? You say, well, here's what I'm doing.
Mm.
Here's how I'm
Yeah.
doing it. Here's my plan for myself, and I don't want you to worry because the from a family standpoint, families just worried
Yeah.
about your ability to take care of yourself. They just
Yeah.
want to know that you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
But our career often takes time to develop, so you got to let your family in on what you're doing,
Mm.
so that if they don't get it, they can come to understand,
Mm.
you know.
And sometimes it doesn't even, there are so many artists that start their career in their 50s.
Right.
Like
Right.
I see that often, and that's a beautiful journey also. I mean, and there's some people like I had a family, and I do have a family that really supports the arts. My grandfather was a
Right.
musician, and I think my dad, he was able to see my grandfather be a very successful musician. He played for
Nice.
and with the Ray Charles Symphony. He played for Tina Turner. Then
Oh wow.
my brother's an actor, and
Nice.
he's been successful. And and so I've blessed to be around creatives that have found success, but everyone doesn't have that. And also
Right.
everyone doesn't have the infrastructure to for their family to be supportive, because this does not this pathway does not, I don't care what type of art you're in, your graphic designer, all of it doesn't make money right away.
Right.
Like, and it's definitely a path that you have to be committed to, and you have to make a decision of, I love this. I'm gonna figure out how to do it. I'm gonna take it serious. And because there is no actual structure and no path that says do this, do this, do this, you're going to be successful. I need to figure that out myself, and I need to be serious about being an entrepreneur as well as an artist.
Right.
And if
Right.
you
And
don't
the
do that,
basic thing that And the
yeah,
basic thing that people said was just like, oh, okay, if you're going to take an unconventional path, just know that you're not going to be out here necessarily buying like the latest hot new sneaker drop or something like that. It's like your
yeah,
expenses are going to stay low. So you
mm-hmm,
can like just put your one money you do earn into, having a place to live, paying your basic bills, and being able to do your work,
yeah,
and keeping that sort of attitude. That's how, actors who, your brother's an actor for, I'm sure, for many years. He planned for, the fact that he was not going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks.
yeah,
So, you know, part of that was keeping his expenses low,
yeah, yeah,
not running up credit card bills and stuff like
yeah.
that. And
Well,
just really just thinking about how do you make this work so that because the path to success is half of it is about being able to outlast,
mm,
you know
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and and just figuring out like how do I get from beginning of the year to the end of the year. Okay,
yeah,
so okay, I did 1 year, so now let me do get to the next year. It's just like you can figure that out,
yeah,
then
you might be all
you can
right.
start to build some momentum and
Yeah,
whatnot. um So yeah, I think it's about a mindset shift, both from the artist standpoint and also from and also being willing to like have those tough conversations with family if they are like, "What are you doing out here?" and everything. And it's just like you got to be able to articulate what it is you're doing and why, and like the
yeah,
progress you're making, and so they can be brought in, because why would most Black families know about like what it means to have a child or a sibling who's an artist?
right. And hopefully we're doing the work, some of the work, the good work here in order to,
Absolutely.
to create that. But, I want people in the comments, if you are an artist, to just put a little hand up if someone has ever asked you if you're still doing that art thing.
Oh my God, that
I feel like
art
that's
thing.
that's the question that your family asks you. Hey, you still doing your art thing?
Yeah, every
It's
Thanksgiving, that's that question
that's
coming
the
up.
question.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just a few more questions, and then we're gonna jump
Mhm.
into the glory hour. So what do you hope the next generation of collectors never has to deal with?
Wow, next generation of collectors never has to deal with. Here's the thing that I hope they never have to deal with. I hope they never have to deal with feeling inadequate when you walk into a gallery for the first time. I just like, this is the big hurdle that we need to get over. And it is often not about I'm not smart enough or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It is about the fact that yes, many spaces have not been welcoming to the Black people, but at the same time, just knowing you have every right to be there,
Mm,
and that understand if you can understand the rules of the road inside a gallery, you can thrive in those spaces and you can enjoy your time in those spaces. It's like it's not a typical retail environment, for example, where, when you go to you go to a Macy's or like a big department store or someplace and you walk in, they're like, "Hey, how can I help you?" You might just get a, "Hey, welcome." And then the person goes back to whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of normal in galleries, and it's not really about you. They don't even get up for like people, like honestly, they don't even get up for white people. But we're used to another kind of situation where in a retail environment where supposedly everything's for sale, somebody's going to come and will sort of ask you like, "Oh, hey, how can I help you?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
They're just knowing the rules of the road means knowing that the folks at the desk are here to answer any questions you may have. Because some people like to come into galleries, just look around and walk out. They don't want to be bothered. And so
Mm-hmm.
galleries tend to err on that side. It doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you. It just means they're not going to like, "Hey, would you like to buy something? You questions about new work?"
Mm.
You need to make that first move. And as we get more and more comfortable with just the rules of that environment, I want people to just feel like, "Hey, we can just like show up at this gallery and see this work and whatnot because this artist is amazing. I've heard some
Yeah.
good things. Moriah or Rob have told me about this. I'm just going to go and not be put off by, you know, just the folkways in galleries or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
like the culture of galleries is not to like, let you come. It's to let you come to them. You know?
Mm.
And once we feel like we should be everywhere and have every right to be there, even if like the last time I was at a gallery was like 2 years ago. Just walk up and go in. If the gallery's open, you can go in. As long as
Yeah.
you're not having a private event, just walk in.
Yeah.
And that's what I want because I think that sort of thing stops a lot of people because they're like, "Am I getting an attitude?" Because they're so used to getting attitude from places and, particularly these white spaces. We're
Yeah.
used to getting like some kind of like, "Oh, that person doesn't have any money," or "That person can't afford what's in here," blah, blah, blah. I don't think they're thinking that, you know. Some may be,
Yeah.
but I think for the most part, they're just like, "Hey, this is kind of how we treat a lot of people." Now,
Yeah.
when you get beyond that, I think things open up for you because you are being proactive in your, dealings with the gallery. And if you have questions, knowing that if you have questions, you can just go up to the desk and be like, "How much is that piece?
Mm-hmm.
And what's still available?
What's still available?
And
Yeah.
and do you have any other shows featuring where the artists are from the African diaspora?"
Mm-hmm.
That's a legit question, and people are happy to talk about that
Mm-hmm.
because most of these galleries do. They have something coming up, you know.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they're like, "Well, this year we don't. We, da, 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 but can we add you to our mailing list and we'll keep you apprised?" And da da da. It's just like taking
It's
those
like understanding the
opportunities.
language, knowing what to ask. Yeah,
Exactly,
just know,
exactly.
kind of just knowing, having a list of questions of maybe, especially if you're serious about walking into our galleries. But like you said, it's the culture of the gallery space for them to kind of just say hi and just like not pay attention to you anymore after that. But
Right,
what's
right, right,
interesting to me, and I just thought about it as you were talking, is if I were not in this space and say it's 7 p.m. and I walk past a gallery, I would actually think it's a private event. I wouldn't
right,
think that it's an opening. Like I wouldn't think that it's open to the public. So
right.
I understand the hesitation there. And not I don't even think it's hesitation. It's just like I'm not going in there. And that's a real thing of especially during an opening. I'm not going in there because that looks private. It's 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. There are a lot of people in there. They don't look like me. I know that's not for me. You
Well,
know?
I had an experience. I was coming out of the Tavares Strachan opening at Marion Goodman a couple of weeks ago, and this woman, white woman, tourist, I heard an accent from somewhere, and there was a gallery next to Marion Goodman. I forget which one it is, and she just happened to say, "Wow, I wonder what's going on in there." I'm like, "It's an art opening. You should just come on in." And so she came on in,
Mm.
because I was going in too. I was just like, and she was like, oh, wow. I mean, I didn't have much more interaction with her, but, those kind of things, like even white people don't know what the protocols are. So
No,
it's
no
not
one
just,
knows.
it's no one knows. And so it's not just us that are just like, what's going on there? I'll see a lot of people standing around like sipping wine and like, what is this? The biggest headline is if it doesn't say private event, it's not a private event. You can go in, it's, yeah.
So, what's a moment in your career, Rob, when you realized the art world wasn't what it seemed?
Well, it wasn't what it seemed. One of the things that I fortunately had I fortunately, because I worked on the institution side, I already knew a good number of artists. So as individually, they were not strangers to me. And so it was through those sort of relationships that I sort of got into the art world. Um, what I was surprised as an advisor was the openness of the galleries.
Mm.
Like I always tell people, the hardest thing for me as an advisor is cultivating collectors as clients. The galleries are easy. All you gotta do is walk in and say, I'm an advisor. And they're like, oh, bet. And artists are happy to meet you and invite you to the studio and whatnot. And, galleries are happy to add you to their list and send you previews. And so it's not like from a information standpoint, you don't immediately get access to information.
Right.
And so that was the surprising thing to me, really, that by and large, when it comes to artists and galleries,
Mm.
I found the art world particularly welcoming,
Mm.
And I think too, if we're honest, I think they're like, oh, he probably knows some collectors that we don't, because the galleries have a collector problem right now in that
Mm.
their traditional collector base, which is older white boomers, is dying.
Mm.
And they need to figure out how to replace those collectors for the good of the overall ecosystem. And I do think the galleries are sort of the first point of contact that most people have with the art world.
Mm-hmm.
But this new younger generation kind of values experiences over like collecting, physical things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do we get those folks engaged? How do we connect with a diverse cohort that has a different set of needs, lifestyles, and interests than, say, the boomers did in coming at art in kind of different contexts? So I do think there was, again, those have been, meeting galleries, meeting artists, particularly artists from the African diaspora, been great. You know,
Yeah.
it has, that was a big surprise to me. The galleries weren't like, because I thought too that galleries were going to be like, well, who are your collectors and da 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 da, and like really sort of like down the nose. They're like, you got collectors? There's,
I mean,
galleries
yeah,
are
I think
happy
it
to
goes
talk to
both
you.
ways. Some galleries do that. Some galleries definitely not, they might not ask who in particular, but they will ask like
Oh, what
what,
have you placed recently? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they ask,
Which is, yeah,
but
everybody's trying to assess, like, okay, how much time should I give this person? Blah, blah,
right.
blah. And I don't have a problem with that. But that was the thing that by and large, because I, I guess I'm just like old enough to like, have the confidence to walk into a gallery now. Just like, hey, this is who I am. We can work with me and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the hardest thing on the converse side has been, sort of, getting out of my comfort zone to find new potential collectors.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the people I know
Mm-hmm.
already, not necessarily art collectors.
Yeah.
nor are they necessarily interested. They're not necessarily disinterested, but most people that I know are like, one, they don't understand what art advisors do. They're like, oh, you're going to start a gallery?
Hmm.
No. Um,
Yeah.
and or they're like, I don't really buy a lot of art, you know. They don't, and again, they don't see it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the work has been to find people who are both interested and will commit the time to exploring and going on that journey.
Yeah.
And that has been the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But we're getting better at it, all the time. So
Yeah. I could agree. I could totally agree that that is definitely the hardest thing is to like kind of grow your collector base, your clientele of collectors, but what it takes is just going out.
going out, you just got to be out there. You just got to be out there because eventually the dirty secret of the art world and of any of these spaces, and this is probably true for any industry. The longer you stick around, you will eventually meet everybody.
Yeah.
You eventually meet everyone. And
Yeah.
so you don't have to trip like, oh my God, I didn't meet someone. You are eventually you're gonna meet everybody. And again, if you going back to our early conversation, if you're a person that moves with integrity and honesty and authenticity, people will start inviting you to things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why don't you come to this dinner
Mm-hmm.
afterwards? Oh, blah, blah, blah. You really are into the stars. Hey, we're getting ready to do this thing over here. You should come. And you start meeting more people. And so
The hard part is
it's,
actually going. To me, for
yeah.
me, the hard part
Mhm.
is actually is not getting the invite. It's continually getting the invite because you went. And it's not, it's the all the other life events going on and
Right,
making
right,
sure because the art world is heavily things are happening at night and it's always something that's kind of coded in a party, you know?
right.
So
I mean, look, I remember being a young parent at one point, and
yeah.
my wife was, and when I was my son was just born, I was still running around the music industry at that point. And my wife said to me, "You go out 5 nights a week if you want,
Mm.
but you're responsible for getting that boy a bath and making sure he's asleep. Then
Yeah.
you are welcome to go out, you
Yeah.
know." And so that was kind of the deal. It was just like, okay. And fortunately, unlike the art world, the music thing don't start till like 10 o'clock. So you're
Yeah.
like, whatever, it works out. But art, the openings are like 6 to 8. So you kind of are like, okay, how am I going to get to that?
Oh
Or
my
the dinner
God.
start at 8. Yeah, it's tough right now,
Yeah.
but you will figure it out.
Well, we've been figuring it out. I don't know how we got on me, but we've been
And
figuring it out. I mean, it's
but it
just my
is,
job, it's just
yeah.
and I think I have to I've had to remind myself in this new motherhood journey. I've had to
Mhm.
remind myself that it's my job to go to these places. So,
Right. Yeah.
but
And you need to see the work, and you
you
need
need
to,
to,
see the
yeah.
collectors who are there. You need to like see the gap. They need to see you. I mean, they need to,
Mhm.
you need to just like, you need to be bringing collectors to things and,
Mhm.
oh, the
Mhm.
shows are coming up and like, you need to be seen. You need to be seen on the floor of the Dallas Invitational with your collector.
Thank you. Thank you for
The
reminding me.
galleries need to
No,
see that.
seriously, they need to see you and you have to
They need to see
travel.
you.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this and we'll get more into that later, off camera, but you have to travel like in the space of an advisor. If you're working with collectors want to know that you are where the art is. And that's not
Right.
in the city. That's not only, I mean, you live in New York, so you have such an expansive world of art right in
Right.
front of you.
Yeah. I'm
And that
lucky. I'm
doesn't mean
really
that you
fortunate.
don't have to travel. You also have to travel as an
Right.
advisor, right? I mean,
Right.
it's a very global job. And
Right.
yeah,
Right. Global if you can afford it and everything.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, the things that I went to Miami, Basel, for the first time, somebody was just like, "Oh, you should come to Chicago for Expo.
yeah,
You should or June, are you coming to Basel in Switzerland? It would be so great to see you, and we
yeah,
could all like go to dinner." I'm just like, it would be lovely, but first rule of business is don't necessarily spend ahead of revenues. And I'm just like, I'll get there.
yeah.
I will get there, but I need to get there in a way that makes sense
Mm.
for my business. And again, I feel like, yo, I am in New York City.
Yeah,
There
you
are
are.
openings every week
Yeah.
at reputable galleries.
What an interesting
There's a
space to be in,
Yeah.
to be in an
Hmm.
industry where people ask you, are they going to see you in Switzerland? And when I first got really embedded into this space and I started traveling because I do travel a lot because I feel like I have to and I do and I enjoy it. I mean, I love traveling. I
Oh
love
yeah.
traveling to see art. But once people start seeing you pop up in LA, pop up in New York, and then like you said, you kind of start to get to know everybody domestically and worldwide. Like you start having friends in all of these different states and all of these different countries because you are popping up there. Like you're literally popping up during an event.
Hmm.
And they start
Right.
asking you, hey, am I going to see you in Switzerland? And I think it's such a crazy question. But
No, it was like that in the film industry. When I once got a chance to um, volunteer at a film festival in Galway, Ireland. And
mm,
so I was hanging out with some of the film people back then, and literally somebody's like, "So, are we going to see you in Sweden or Finland for the Land of the Midnight Sun Film Festival?" That
yeah,
was the next one on the circuit. And I was like, no, I'm going home. But again, because you're there, people are like, oh, so you're on the circuit too. So we'll see you at the next spot.
right. The craziest
Right.
thing for me is I was in Spain. I was in Barcelona. And
Mm-hmm.
did I tell you this? I don't think I
Mm-mm.
did. I was in Barcelona and I was posting pictures of myself in Barcelona. And a gallery, a friend galleries that we've been talking, they were in Paris. And they were like, "Oh, you're in Barcelona. You should come to Paris." And,
Exactly.
but I did. It was so funny. I was with my family and I said, "Hey, I know y'all are going wherever y'all are going tomorrow, but I'm gonna go to Paris." And it was such a good moment because it kind of allowed them to see like how this world kind of how fast it is and how you kind of have to jump from country to country.
And you
And
can do that in Europe.
and you can do it in Europe, right? And so I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to Paris tomorrow." And they all dropped it. It was like 15, maybe 20 of us. They all dropped their plans and said, "Well, we're gonna come to Paris with you." And we all went to Paris.
Right.
It was so
Now
fun.
that that's on the table, see, it just opens up that possibility. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it really is. And like, that is part of, if you live in Europe, then it's no thing to hop between countries with the high speed rail.
Yeah.
I think Madrid to Paris is like 8 hours or something like that, or maybe even less.
Yeah. Well, we took a flight and it was a 45-minute
Yeah.
flight.
Yeah, so
So,
it's a 45-minute flight. Boom, you're
yeah.
in Paris, and there you are. You could take the train across to London from there. That'd be
Yep.
an hour. You could be in London. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how people are rolling over there. And the fact is, we are in a global world.
Hmm.
I'm excited about seeing, 154 that's coming up in New York, like the Mayfairs that are going to be in New York,
Yeah.
are I think will be really good. Um, I've heard a lot of good things about, Dallas's two fairs there, and just really, particularly the Invitational,
Yeah.
is supposed to be really, really strong. So there's like art opportunities
Everywhere.
all over the place,
Yeah.
and so just encouraging people to like make sure they go and see stuff, because and fairs for your listeners, and you've probably said this before, is like fairs can be exhausting, but they're also really wonderful opportunities to see a bunch of art in a single place.
Yeah.
So it's really worth it. Just wear some comfortable shoes
Yep.
because you're going to do a lot of walking,
Yep.
and go take a look at stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, that's the best advice I can give folks.
So we're gonna hop into the glory hour, and I want you to finish my sentences for me.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
some of them are crazy.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll start light. The reason I stay in this work is because.
I love it. I really do. I mean, I'm just, as I said earlier, I'm a champion. I'm like just a big old cheerleader for, you know, artists, particularly Black artists,
Yeah.
artists from the African diaspora who are just doing amazing work. Where I'm like, wow, this is really somebody who's trying to push the conversations, push the boundaries of their work and push themselves. And I just want us to see that because as somebody said, 40 million Black people in the country, 40 million different ways to be Black. And I'm all kind of about that. And just like as expansive notions
Yeah.
of Blackness as uh, we can communicate out there because of the role that sort of narrowed versions of Blackness have been playing in communities and perceptions and lives and policy and all that stuff. I think that art, whatever art it is the best way to explode all that.
Yeah. So I know an artist is about to break through when.
I know an artist is about to break through when, and this just happened to me last week, when I see the evolution of their practice, like on the walls. Like there's this dope young brother, Gamaliel Rodriguez, New York based artist, Puerto Rican. We've been, I've been following him and, just we've been knowing each other, good brother. And he does these like really high contrasty kind of like paintings and like, and I like his work.
Yeah.
But this new show that just opened last week, it's Speroni Westwater. It's like things when you see an artist and their things just kind of come together, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like they stick the landing in a way you're like, oh, this is what they were doing, and now they figured out how to just pull it together in a way that just makes the work just like bang, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's at that point now.
Mm.
Now he had the support of the gallery because he's been part of some group shows, some duo shows at this gallery.
Yeah.
But to see where his work has evolved to is so exciting. And I'm like, oh, he ready.
Yeah.
It's just like that's really exciting. It was like when, year over year you saw between Armory 23 and Armory 24, Candy G. Lopez and
Mm.
her, the portraits she recreates out of thread. But
Yeah.
just seeing the work in person year to year is
Yeah.
just like, oh my God.
Mm.
And so that's the kind of thing that I'm just like, they're ready. They're ready for like, really. And if I was excited by both of those artists a year ago, I'm really excited now because
Yeah.
I see the evolution of their practice.
Mm.
Like I've seen it in sort of real time. It's just like, oh, they're really grappling with where their practice can go to. And it's just really exciting. So that's when I know I feel like, hey, y'all need to look at this right now because
Yeah.
next show is going to be more expensive,
Yeah.
way
It's
more.
gonna it's gonna be over for all of us.
It's going to be over. It's going to be over. It's going to be over.
So, okay. One thing I'd never tell a collector to do is,
Flip.
amen.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I tell people like, look, if you're in this because want some quick, some fast money, I don't know how to like time the market so you could flip art, and I don't encourage you to do that because I think that ends up hurting artists. And so I'm not somebody that wants to see anybody in this if they're just trying to get over on some artist and make a fast buck. I mean, part of like knowing your role as a collector is
Mm-hmm.
understanding what it means to be a patron and
Mm-hmm.
a supporter and a champion of the artists that you collect. And I would like to sort of inculcate these kind of like values of like, I'm collecting because I believe in this artist. This artist's work moves me, and I'm putting this money down because I believe in this artist's future, and I want to give them that encouragement.
Yeah. Well, Rob, that
So
oh, I'm sorry, keep going if you
no, I was just gonna say, so that's those are the collectors that I want to deal with. And if you're like, I just want to like kind of quickly buy some art, and who's gonna be hot in like 3 months because I want to flip this. I'm like, you don't need me for that. You don't need me for that.
well, thank you so much. That was powerful. We talked about a lot. I'm looking at the clock here. We did it again. Hour and
We did it again.
47, hour and 47 minutes. I don't know how that happens.
We have good conversation. That's what it is.
Uh,
And I hopefully I gave you something you could like edit out my little like malapropism and
no,
everything.
no, no. I'm keeping that
So
in. They need to know you.
oh
I just want
hey
to
we
thank you for your time, for your clarity, and for the way that you're moving in this space. You're not just advising, you're really thinking deeper and you're thinking about us culturally
right.
and you're thinking about preservation, you're thinking about legacy, and I appreciate that. We need one another to grow. And, as we've talked about in a conversation before, working together and working, just being collaborative is the best
Exactly.
thing. Yeah, it's the best thing that
And
we could do.
yeah, and I would just say, particularly at this moment we find ourselves when so much of Black history and Black culture is under attack by the forces of the evil forces of mediocrity.
Mm,
I do think that it is important for the people of all persuasions who value art from the African diaspora in the global South to stand up and be, among that community of patrons who support these artists because, this is the time for artists to get to work. Everybody wants to throw out that Toni Morrison quote, but it's
yeah.
like artists can't work if they're not getting the support from collectors and from institutions and, you know, people with like lots of money to be supporting all these incredible artists because there's just so many out there, and the stories that will enrich us as humanity are being told, and those stories need to be supported and amplified. So that's kind of why I'm here. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much. So
thank you,
much.
thank
And
you,
for
thank you.
everyone watching, if this conversation did anything for you like it did for me, and I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. This is the second time we've recorded this. So I appreciate Rob so much, and it's my fault. It's not Rob's fault.
It
Um,
just is what it is, It just is what it is, It's
yeah.
like, I'm honored to be, you know, um, in conversation with you, in community with you, an opportunity to talk to the incredible audience that you've cultivated and continue to cultivate. It's a real honor for me. I've been since I got into this, I was like, oh, who is sister doing this? Oh, so we have I've been doing the admiring from afar kind of thing, and I was just so honored and pleasantly surprised when, you were just like, "Hey, let's have this conversation."
Let's
So
talk.
thank
I
you,
mean, look, that's
thank you.
that's that's all we got to do is we got to keep the conversation going, keep the momentum going. And this was a totally different conversation than we had the first time.
Yes, a good one too, a good one
Yeah,
too.
a good one. So I appreciate you. If this conversation did anything for you guys, make sure you share it and make sure, guys, if you're a collector out there and Rob is someone that you're resonating with, make sure you reach out to Rob and if he's your guide to help you along your collecting journey and tag someone who's collecting with curiosity to this episode or someone who's building outside of even building outside of the institution and I'll say that because those that are building outside of the institution, but those that have the willingness to give to the institution.
Right.
I'll
Right.
say that. And of course, follow Rob and check out Aesthetic Index because there's a lot of wisdom there, a lot of wisdom being shared there. And until next time, Rob, is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, just thank you. Yeah, folks can reach me at mighty2x.com, which is my advisory and marketing site. And I'm on the gram at Rob Fields or at Mighty2XNY. I share a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing art wise on both those pages. So happy to chat and happy to be a resource. And yeah, if you are not a subscriber to Dear Glory, you should hit that subscribe button.
Please. Thank you. All right, y'all. Until next time. Peace. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Rob, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your expertise, and your perspective on what it really means to collect with intention. This was such an important conversation, not just for new collectors, but for anyone looking to refine their approach to art collecting or just start and truly understand how to navigate this market. So, to everyone listening or watching, I hope you're walking away with a clearer vision of how to start or grow your collection. Because here's the thing, you might feel just a little bit overwhelmed, or you might feel unsure where to begin, or you need a little bit of guidance finding the right artist. Rob and I are here to help. If you want to take that next step, whenever you're ready, okay, you can connect with Rob Fields via email at hello@mighty2x.com or follow him on Instagram at Rob Fields to learn more about his advisory services. If you'd like my guidance on curating a collection that speaks to you, you can book a consultation with me. Head over to moriahalise.com and you can get started there. And if you're not quite ready for one-on-one consulting, but you want a deeper dive, my Patreon, The Glory Collective, is the place to learn, research, and join a community of collectors who are growing together. You'll get first access to artist insights, market trends, and my real-time research as I build my fantasy collection. Again, join the community at patreon.com/The Glory Collective. Now, if you found value or you were really excited to listen to this conversation today, I want you to do me a favor and share this with someone who's interested in collecting but doesn't know where to start. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. And if this conversation resonated with you, leave a comment. I'll talk back. I want to talk to you guys. I really want to talk to you guys. So leave a comment. Leaving a comment, liking the video, subscribing is also a push in helping more people find these discussions and feel empowered to start collecting. Because at the end of the day, art is for everyone. And whether you're buying your first or acquiring your first work or building a collection for the long run, what matters is that you collect with passion, knowledge, and intention. I'll see you guys next time. Please stay inspired, please stay strategic, and keep collecting with your heart and with confidence. Peace.